Let's begin Chapter 2, Lesson 2 on page 121 of your book. Lesson 2 is solving two-step equations. Let's highlight our essential question. What is equivalence? Our new vocabulary would be properties and two-step equations, and our content standards are 8.EE.7, 8.EE.7a, and 8.EE.7b, which we will discuss in class. We'll also be using mathematical practices 1, 2, 3, and 4, which we will also discuss. Let's take a look at the top where it says vocabulary startup. It says, recall that in mathematics, properties are statements that are true for any number. Underneath that, it has some properties: the addition property of equality, the division property of equality, the multiplication property of equality, and the subtraction property of equality. It says complete the graphic organizer by matching the property of equality with the correct example. These are properties that you should know, but if you don't, if you think about it, they make sense because they're going to have something to do with addition, division, multiplication, and subtraction. So if I take a look at this, I have 1/2 times x equals 10. In order to solve that, I multiply both sides by 2 in order to solve it. So if I am multiplying, I'm using the multiplication property of equality. On the next one, I have 3 times x equals 9. In order to solve it, I divide both sides by 3, so I'm working with the division property of equality. On the third one, I have x plus 3 equals 1. In order to solve it, I subtract 3 from both sides. When I subtract 3 from both sides, I'm working with the subtraction property of equality. And so the last one, x minus 5 equals 6. To solve it, we add 5 to both sides, would be the addition property of equality. Once you have completed that graphic organizer, let's turn to page 122. At the top, page 122, we're going to solve two-step equations. A two-step equation contains two operations. In the equation 2x plus 3 equals 7, x is multiplied by 2, and then 3 is added. To solve two-step equations, undo each operation in reverse order. The important part about solving two-step equations is that you need to remember that we always add or subtract first, then we multiply or divide. If you remember to do the steps in that order, it will make it much easier for you to get these done properly. Notice again, I haven't reminded you in a while that you have videos and tutors and different things up here that you can use. You also have tools this time, and that is to use for number 1, using the algebra tiles to solve. I'm not going through this method by video. We may do this in class together for those who are having issues solving. So we're going to look down at the bottom at method 2 using symbols, and this is the method that we're going to use. So for 2x plus 3 equals 7, the very first thing we're going to do is use the subtraction property of equality and subtract 3 from both sides, because remember, our goal is to get this alone. We want to isolate our variable. And to do that, I have a positive 3, and so I need to subtract 3 from both sides. That leaves me with 2x equals 4. So 2 times x equals 4. I'm going to divide both sides by 2 using the division property of equality, and x equals 2. Let's take a look down at the bottom at the two examples. We have 3x plus 2 equals 20, and 5 plus 2n equals -1. We'll look at A first. Again, we want to get the term with the variable alone, and so we have a positive 2, so we need to subtract 2 first, because remember, we always do our addition or subtraction first. That leaves me with 3x equals 20 minus 2, which is 18. So now I have 3 times x equals 18. To solve that, I have to divide both sides by 3 to get x by itself, and I get x equals. So we'll put that over To the side for A, x equals 6. On B, we have 5 plus 2n equals negative 1. In order to get the variable term alone, we have a positive 5, so we need to subtract 5 from both sides. We get 2n equals negative 1 minus 5. Now, if you're still having some problems with integers, put that over to the side. Negative 1 minus 5. Subtraction rule is same, opposite, opposite, and then we use our addition rules. Negative 1 plus negative 5 is negative 6. So 2n equals negative 6, 2 times n, so I'm going to divide both sides by 2, n equals negative 3. So we'll write our answer over to the left, n equals negative 3. Let's move to page 123 and look at example 2. Notice in example 2 that we have a fraction. If you go back to lesson 1, if you're having issues with fractions, you might want to review lesson 1 to remind you how to solve these equations with fractions. If you feel pretty comfortable with them, go ahead and follow along with me on the example and we'll do some problems together. 25 equals 1/4 n minus 3. First thing we have to do is to add or subtract. So we know we need to get 1/4 n alone. In order to do that, we've got to get rid of the negative 3, so we need to add 3 to both sides. 25 plus 3 is 28 equals 1/4 n. Once we get to this point, in order to get rid of the 1/4, we're going to use the multiplication property of equality and multiply both sides by 4 in order to get the 4 to cancel out. So 4 times 28 is 112. 4 times 1/4 is n, so the solution is 112. Let's look at the problems below. C says negative 1 equals 1/2 a plus 9. I'm going to show my work over to the right, so you can move over here if you would like. Negative 1 equals 1/2 a plus 9. The first thing I want to do is get this term by itself, and so I need to get rid of the positive 9. To do that, I subtract 9 from both sides. Negative 1 minus 9 is negative 10, and that equals 1/2 a. And then I use my multiplication property of equality, and I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. And that gives me negative 20 equals a. So for C, the answer is a equals negative 20. I'll work D down here. So we want to get 2/5 r by itself. In order to do that, we need to get rid of the negative 5 by adding 5 to both sides, our addition property of equality. That leaves us with 2/5 r equals 7 plus 5, which is 12. And now I'm going to multiply both sides of the equation by 5 using the multiplication property of equality. And now I'm left with 2r equals, actually let me back it up because there's an easier way to do that. Let's multiply both sides by 5 over 2. This will save us a step. If I multiply by 5 over 2, these are going to cancel out because it becomes 10 over 10, which we know is 1. And then we'll multiply 12 over 1 times 5 over 2, and we get r equals 60 over 2, and 60 over 2 is 30. So for D, r equals 30. Let's look down at example 3. Example 3 says solve 6 minus 3x equals 21. The way that they do it in the example here is not the way that I prefer to do it. So it says to rewrite the left side as addition. I would prefer not to do that. I think it's easier if we get used to seeing it the other way for when we move to algebra. So let's just not look at what they've done and let's do our own over here. We have 6 minus 3x equals 21. The first thing I do is I look and I see that I have a minus in front of this 3x, which makes it a negative 3x. I need to get negative 3x by itself. In order to do that, I need to get rid of the 6, so I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides. That leaves me with negative 3x equals 21 minus 6, which is 15. And then I'm going to use the division property of equality and divide both sides by -3, and I get x equals -5. Over to the side, it talks about a common error of solving the equation by dividing each side by a +3 instead of a -3. And so that's the reason why they rewrite the left side as addition. I prefer for you not to do that. I want you to be able to see that this subtraction sign makes this a -3x. And so you just circle the -3x so we know we need to get it alone. And once you subtract your 6, you're left with -3x equals 15. For algebra next year, it'll be much better for you if you're able to do it that way. Let's take a look at the problems at the bottom. Letter E says 10 minus 2/3 p equals 52. Let's circle what we need to get alone. We've got -2/3 p, and we need to get that alone. We've got a +10, so we're going to use the subtraction property of equality and subtract 10 from both sides. That's going to leave us with -2/3 p equals 52 minus 10, which is 42. Once we get there, we're going to multiply both sides by the reciprocal of -2/3, so we get -3/2. We can make this a 42/1 if it helps you. These are going to cancel, so we get p equals 42 times -3 is going to be -126/2, and if I simplify that, I get -63. So E is P equals -63. I would like for you to try F and G on your own. If you need some extra space, you can use some workspace down here at the bottom or over here to the right in this little white space here. Try them, and let's first circle what we need to get alone. We know we've got to get a -3x here and an n over -3 here. So be careful what you need to get rid of. Go ahead and get your answers for F and G and write them over to the side. When you finish, come back and we'll finish the lesson. Now that you've completed the problems on page 123, let's look at page 124, guided practice. I want you to complete problems 1 through 4 for tomorrow. Bring those in and we'll go through them together, and that will complete the lesson. So if you have any questions, bring those with you tomorrow as well.